Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us virtually for the Spring Speaker Series brought to you by the Peckham Community Partnership Foundation. Our quick announcement here, our translators, our sign language interpreters were not able to make it this afternoon, and so one of our facilitators is going to be dropping into chat instructions on how to turn on live captioning. So hopefully that will help. We will be putting out a recorded video, and that will have captioning also put on it. So if you struggle with your caption, go ahead and you can drop it in the chat. Somebody will hop on and walk you through that. So again, I'm delighted to welcome you all here. We had a really great session this morning, but I think it was just a warm up for this afternoon. You know, I had the opportunity to have lunch with our guest speaker, and I think what struck me is how comfortable, even after an hour and 15-minute session, we were having uncomfortable conversations. And I think this year, we've had to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. We've had a lot of uncomfortable situations. I want to take a moment to highlight that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I don't think there's ever been a time that being concerned about our emotional wellness is more important than it has been during this global pandemic. So, you know, at Peckham, we believe in creating a workplace where we can have these discussions about grief and loss and trauma and how that makes us feel. And we know that emotional well-being is a big part of our ability to work, our ability to have a healthy family life, and our ability to move forward after trauma. So we're really excited to bring to you today Nora McInerny, who later on, Justin Walworth will kind of give a little synopsis of the things that she's been through. But I think the overarching message is that I took from her this morning was moving forward. And as we look at how do we come out of the global pandemic, how do we deal with 3 million people across the world who are no longer with us, moving forward is the way we're going to do that. And so I want to, last fall, we had Steve Pemberton here, and he talked about being a lighthouse and being a lighthouse for others. And I certainly hope that's what Peckham is for all of the team members we work with. And I hope each of you are a lighthouse for others as well as we work through what is normal after the pandemic. As I said earlier, this speaker series is brought to you by the Peckham Community Partnership Foundation. And I tell everybody never more than this year am I so thankful that the founders of the Peckham Community Partnership Foundation started it up 20-some years ago because it allowed us to continue with our vital programs and services when many other nonprofits across the country were really hard hit. So I welcome you to make both moral and financial donations to the Peckham Community Partnership Foundation. You can go to www.peckham.org. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Justin to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Joe. And I just want to give a big shout out again to the Community Partnership Foundation for bringing this speaker series. This is one of the highlights for me personally to have each year. We bring so many amazing speakers in. You know, today we're really excited to have Nora talk with us. You know, she's got an amazing story. And as Joe talked about it, you know, her story is, it's a challenging one. It starts around dealing with those difficult conversations, death and loss and illness, mental health, trauma, and how to move forward with those, you know, with grief and resilience, but also joy and love and laughter. She draws on her own story of profound loss. In 2014, Nora miscarried her second baby, lost her dad to cancer, and became a widow at the age of 31. when her husband died from brain cancer. This experience turned Nora into what she calls a reluctant grief specialist, a best-selling memoirist, and a founder and dedicated shining light into the dark things in life with wit, humor, and heart. Her accomplishments include award-winning author of several memoirs, including It's Okay to Laugh and Crying's Okay Too, The Hot Young Widows Club, Lessons on Survival from the Front Lines of Grief, and No Happy Endings, a memoir. She's the creator of the award-winning podcast, Terrible, Thanks for Asking. Nora is a founder of the nonprofit organization Still Kickin', which provides grants to help others in need of medical, financial support, and the Hot Young Widows Club, which comforts and supports those who've lost significant others. I, like Joe said, I had the privilege of having lunch with her and hearing a bunch of stories. But I first was introduced to Nora in the summer of 2019 when I was kind of dealing with a lot of grief and what seemed like this endless season of trauma and loss in my own personal life and here at work. And I found her TED Talk, and it gave me hope, and it gave me words, and it gave me a framework for what it's like to move forward and to know that it was okay to be wherever I was at that time. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce Nora. So thank you, Nora, for coming today.
Oh my God, calm down, everyone. Wow. Oh my God. I'm just going to hold for all the applause. Thank you so much, Justin. It's been such a pleasure to be here, to be out of my home. Today, I ate lunch with members of the Peckham family. I ate lunch outside of my own house and with people who are not related to me. So it's been a big day for me. And really, what is this day if not just about me, obviously? So thank you so much for having me here, especially to David and Ian. Look, the IT team are really always the heroes of every situation, especially because this morning my computer I think it was attempting to explode. We have no idea what happened. We did all the IT, turned it off and then on. Turned it off again. That seemed to work. So here we are today. I am Nora McInerny, as Justin mentioned. I am the author of several funny books about sad things. And there are so many sad things. When you look at these titles of these books, you might be thinking like, is this woman okay? Should she be standing on any kind of podium? And the answer is TBD. Okay, you can make that decision later. I am the creator of the podcast Terrible. Thanks for asking. Again, I'm just so good at naming things. And just between me and you and the people on this call, that was supposed to be the title of my first book, but the publishers at HarperCollins said that the title was too negative for a book where my husband dies. Okay, they were like, oh God, terrible. Terrible, thanks for asking. I don't know, it just sounds a little like a bummer. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I guess I am a little bit of a bummer. So that's what I'm known for. This TED Talk that Justin mentioned is available wherever you get your TED Talks. It is called We Don't Move On from Grief, We Move Forward with It, and it has been viewed 50 million times worldwide, which was shocking to me and should not have been. It should not have been, because I have learned the difficult way, the way we all must learn most lessons, that everybody experiences grief. Everybody experiences grief, and yet every time it happens, it feels like, one, it has only happened once and only happened to you. Everybody experiences grief, and yet grieving remains a privilege. So those are all like those are things that I would put on my professional resume. But what I believe is more important than my professional resume, the thing that brings me to stages like this, or even to stages in my own living room typically, are the things that Justin mentioned that happened to me personally. My tough year so far, toughest one so far was 2014. On October 3rd, I lost my second pregnancy. We were at 11 weeks and 6 days. Anybody who has wanted to be pregnant, who has been pregnant, who has ever been around a pregnancy knows that those first 12 weeks are the ones that are supposed to make you nervous. And if you can just make it past 12 weeks, nothing can happen. That is, of course, absolutely untrue, but it did feel like a particularly rude rude miscarriage, honestly. I was like, what? No, we were almost there. We almost made it. And there's just no almost. And 5 days after I had that miscarriage, my father, who had been diagnosed with lymphoma a few months prior, he died. Okay, so already we're at 2. And then 6 weeks later, my husband, Aaron, on November 25th, he had been sick with glioblastoma, stage 4 brain cancer, for 3 years. And then he died. Okay, the rudest of all. All of that happened one after another after another. So that was 2014. And this picture is roughly 2019. I certainly didn't get family photos taken in 2020. And I forgot even that we're in a whole new year. I asked somebody 2 minutes before we started, wait, what month is it? They're like, it's May. I was like, of when? Of what? Where are we right now? It's May. Are you serious? So this is a family photo from 2019. You might be wondering, who are all these people? I thought you said your husband was dead. I got remarried. So this is my current husband, Matthew. Right behind him is Aaron, my first husband, in a portrait of our family as it used to be. Matthew and I met a year after Aaron died, and we blended our families. Matthew came with 2 children, Ian and Sophie. I brought Ralph, my baby, with Aaron, and then together we had our baby, who we call Baby. I mean, he has a name, but he responds to Baby. He's going to be the worst adult man. Just imagine what it's going to be like to date or be married to a man who's like, but I'm a baby, which is like, he's 4 and he's like, but I'm a baby. I'm like, we've got to stop this now. We've got to stop this before he's a 40-year-old monster who's like, but I'm the baby. I can already see it happening. So this is our family photo from 2019. Ralph is the kid who's like going, hey, I don't know. He went through this whole phase where he always just wanted to pose like he had opened a Italian family restaurant and was putting himself on the brochure, which I think he also would do. So this is our family. This is our family. And when people meet us, when they kind of hear like the whole backstory, they say to my husband, they say to me, oh, how lucky, how wonderful it is that you've moved on. And I don't really know how he feels about it. I know how I feel about it, which is I feel this tingling of anger, of irritation. Like, yes, we are lucky. It is so lucky to be alive in this world. It is so lucky to find love once, twice. That's crazy luck. That's almost too much luck to be struck by the good kind of lightning twice. That's wild. But I hate hearing that phrase that we've moved on, because as you can see from this picture, and as you can see from spending any amount of time with our family, we've not moved on. We've moved forward and created this new version of our family together. And I'm specifically very careful about that language when it comes to our children, because I never want them to feel as if this current happiness, our current family, comes at the cost of what they had before. You don't get a blended family without losing something. And 3 out of 4 of these children know what it's like to have a different version of a family that they knew and that they loved and that was important to them. Language is important. And I don't think anybody says moving on in order to offend us, in order to hurt us. They say it to encourage us. And that's why it's so important to me that we make that slight tweak and say moving forward, because if you live long enough, you know you're going to go through something hard. You're going to go through actually many hard things. And you know that those hard things do not preclude you from ever experiencing joy. And you need that same latitude to be able to say, oh, okay, so then this current happiness does not mean I have to discount everything that happened before. Now, we are not, here in the US, we are not a culture that is fantastic at grief. We're just not. The average family bereavement leave policy, right, at any company is like 3 business days. But that's only if you are a full-time employee, right? Most people, if you are a part-time employee, if you don't have benefits, you don't get any time off. And the bereavement policies that we have are policies for a reason. Everybody needs rules, everybody needs regulations, but sorrow and pain and grief do not care about your rules or your regulations. We are a culture that venerates strength. We like people who are winners, right? Like we like people who can pick themselves up by the bootstraps, which is not actually physically possible. We like people who stumble, but then get up right away. We like when something happens and it is immediately alchemized into meaning, into something else, into something better. Now, you might have surmised, right, from some of the titles of my books or the title of my podcast that I'm not the kind of person who is going to tell you that everything happens for a reason or that you can just find the bright side. In fact, I have a hard time with those phrases too. And I think when we think about our culture, it's easy to think about, imagine big systems, the things that shape us. But there's also messages that we receive explicitly and implicitly all the time about the ways that we are supposed to experience hardship. And mostly they tell us that we shouldn't experience it, that is an interruption to our lives, not a part of our life. So I have a couple examples that I did not have to look far to get at all. Here's the first one. Focus on the good. Yes, we love good things. I think we can all agree. Like, do you like to have a good day? Yeah, me too. And also, Aaron's cancer wasn't technically a good thing. Okay, in fact, I would put it squarely if we are committing to a binary into the pile of bad. Okay, it was not good for him to have stage 4 brain cancer, and also that did require our focus. It required our focus to make sure that he got his medicines, that he went to chemo and radiation, that he had the tools and the resources he needed to stay alive while he still could. So we do need to focus on the good, and we need to focus on what's important. What is important is not always easy. Your only limit is your mind. Who feels like this is true? Who feels like the only thing that has ever held them back in life, that is the only thing that has ever stood between them and their expectations and their dreams and desires was just their mind, right? Not like, their physical health, not their socioeconomic status. No, just their mind. No, okay, we don't like this one, okay? And then good vibes only. Sure, yes, like fan of good vibes, but what do we do then with our bad vibes, okay? What do we do with dead husband vibes and pandemic vibes and anxiety vibes and mental illness vibes? We need a space for all vibes. I would love to see this amended to like a variety of vibes acceptable here. We accept Visa, MasterCard, bad vibes, good vibes, okay-ish vibes, in-between-ish vibes. It's not as quippy. We're going to need a bigger sign, but I do believe in us. Okay, this one. Be the energy you want to attract. What do you do with the other energy? Like, what do we do? What do we do with the other kinds of energy? And also, is it just a matter of attraction? Are you saying that I attracted all of these bad things? I don't love that. That doesn't feel good to me as a person who's struggling or suffering. But I'm picking on these examples, not because I just love negativity, but because I'm a person who embraces reality. And reality is not always so simple, and it definitely does not always look cute on Instagram. But those examples are a part of the culture that we are steeped in, that we are pickled in. It is a part of the air that we breathe, and we don't even necessarily notice it. It is a culture where our pain is an aberration, an interruption. It is the same culture where, men don't cry unless it's about sports. It is not great, right? It doesn't feel good. So when I say that we move on, geez Louise, we move forward with, geez. Okay. When I say that we move forward with our experiences and our losses and our struggles and not on from the obvious question, the persistent question is, okay, like how do we do this? And I am not going to stand up here and present myself as the shining example of how things should go. My life is not a roadmap for anybody else. but me. I'm not going to tell you that if you just adjust your vision, you will actually see that things aren't so bad after all. There is a silver lining. Maybe if you just try harder, you can extract some meaning from it. Instead, I'm going to ask all of us to look at those ways that we think and that we act, the ways that we don't even realize that we are doing it, and to shift our mindset and our vision just a little bit. One of the things that I heard a lot after those losses was, "You're so resilient." And I never knew what to say afterwards. I never knew what to say afterwards because it definitely didn't feel true. I did not feel resilient at all. I felt as if I were being just electrocuted with a thousand needles at once, or I felt nothing at all, or I felt like I was interacting with the world from behind like a thick pane of frosted glass, not even the clear stuff, the kind that really like obstructs your vision. Like maybe somebody had built like a glass brick wall, you know, like those really 90s ones that are popular in bathrooms. Like, oh, love that. Love that. Okay. Height of when I was a kid, if I saw that in a bathroom, I was like, this is glamorous. This is wonderful. I love it. Like wavy glass. How do they do it? So I felt like I was behind one of those things, or I felt nothing at all. And I'm going to be a little bit literal, but the dictionary.com definition of resilient is to return to your original shape and quickly. Quickly, like I cannot do a show of hands because I can't see you, but I'm gonna have David look at that screen. I'm gonna have everyone turn on their computer. I'm just kidding. But I'm gonna have David turn the monitor towards me. But how many people of the 6 people in this room feel like after the year that they've had that they are just back to who they were in 2019, right? Like nothing ever happened. I don't. And I don't think that that is the actual definition of resilience. I don't think that is the definition of resilience that anybody should be working from. I firmly believe that we are meant to be shaped by our experiences and that we already have been. I'm going to prove it to you with a light exercise. If the question is, am I normal? The answer is yes, you are painfully, blessedly, brilliantly, just average, completely normal. And I'm going to prove it to you. If you have at your disposal any sort of writing utensil, piece of paper, even just your fingers, just keep track. I'm going to read out loud a list of reactions. And this is a partial list taken from another partial list. And I want you to just think back past the past. Think back past the past. Think back through the past 14 months. In those 14 months, have you experienced a racing heart? Have you had a clenched jaw? Tightness in your neck and your shoulders? Have you had a hard time falling asleep? Have you had a hard time staying awake? Have you had a hard time staying focused at work? Or have you been absolutely hyper-focused on work? Have you been feeling more anxious lately? Have you been feeling hopeless? Have you had stomach issues? All of those things, I'd love to hear, what are the tallies? What kind of numbers are we coming up with here? What do you get? 7. Okay. Oh, 9. Oh, yeah, Justin wins. Wait, Katie, what about you? 9. Tie, face off. Okay. All of those were grief reactions. And I know we tend to, especially in Western culture, we tend to say, oh, grief is, that's reserved for if somebody dies, and also only somebody close to you, right? It's got to be, we have to rank all of our losses. We have to sort them out into piles and make sure they make sense. So if I were to make you turn towards your neighbor and compare numbers like I just did with Justin and Katie, I would then say, okay, let's think past your number. Let's think past your number. And I want you to talk to each other and consider in your own mind, how were you socialized? How were you raised to deal with or not deal with hard things? What are your identities? What identities do you hold, and how have those impacted you up to this point? What sort of values and beliefs do you have to lean on when things get hard? What is your safety net, your social network like? What sort of coping mechanisms do you have or not have? And what you start to see when you bring all of that together is something that my friend Dr. Anna Roth and I call your grief recipe. And you start to see that it is as unique as you are. That yes, even in these situations where we can look at each other and say, well, everybody went through 2020. We all went through this together. You can also say, yes, we did. We all went through 2020 and we all went through it differently. There's this idea called the monomyth, also known as the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell. And it is this idea that every story, and there are countless stories, every story is unique and it is also one story. And if you pay attention to the books you read, to the movies you watch, you'll start to see this, right? That there's a certain pattern that, you know, whether you're watching Frozen or The Lion King, and I truly and am unable to come up with movies that are not animated cartoons right now, that they all follow a really similar trajectory and a similar path. And that path looks like this. Right now, at the we're like a year ago, 14 months ago, we're all starting out, right? We're in the normal world. We're at homeostasis. Things are fine, right? We're going to work every day. Maybe there have been other sort of like stressors going on in our life, but overall, I don't know, couldn't tell one Monday apart from the other. And then you are pushed into the unknown. You're pushed into the unknown, into an underworld, into a place where nothing makes sense. And that has been us. That's been all of us. For the past 14 months and counting, all of us have been forced to radically reimagine the ways that we work and the ways that we live and the ways that we interact with the people that we love and care about, fully against our will, which is another part of the hero's journey, is nobody goes on it willingly. Nobody. Okay? No one, especially not us, especially not people, okay? Cartoons, sure, but no, people do not go on this trip willingly. And yes, eventually you do emerge, right? This ends in an open spiral and you emerge with special knowledge. You are different, but you spend so much time down there. So much time. In fact, the second act of any movie or book is the longest part. The longest part is the struggle, and it stinks down there, and it has always stunk. So yes, we are all in this, and we are all in it in different ways. For some of us, 2020 and all that has followed has been the big thing. Right? This is the biggest thing that has happened in our lifetimes. And some of us have been here before. And it is very hard to hold two truths in our hands, especially when our hands are already full with the work of surviving, which is the knife's edge that most of us are living at. Most Americans don't have $500 saved for an emergency. Most people are really, truly living on that edge. And how do you keep space for that? The truth that yes, you are doing your best and it's still hard. That yes, you are smiling and it still hurts. It is extremely, extremely difficult to know that we are doing all that we can and that it still doesn't feel like it's enough. Suffering has always been lonely. Loneliness has always been suffering. Always. And for the past year, we have been forced into even more loneliness and more suffering. We have been unable to gather. We have been sort of stripped of all of the ways that we come together as a community. There is no measurement for sorrow or suffering. There is no universal measurement that says this one is that, this one's worse. No, this one is worse. This one is heavier. And that means that our suffering is not something that we can portion up fairly and relieve somebody else of. I can't say, okay, I'll have a harder time at this so that you have an easier time. It just doesn't work that way. But we need each other. We can't do it alone. and we don't. Even when it feels like we absolutely are, even when it feels like we are the only person who has ever experienced this, you tend to find other points of light in the darkness. Right now, we are in the middle of at the tail end, maybe, I don't know, I don't want to make any predictions. I'm not the CDC, I'm not Dr. Fauci. Okay, don't listen to me. I don't know where we are on this. I don't know where we are. I want to say the end, but I'm just going to say the middle end to the middle. I don't know. You did not hear any of that here. I don't know where we are. I am still like way into the unknown at this point. If you cannot tell, I was like deeply thrilled to eat lunch today. Like deeply. I'm going to write about it in my journal. It's going to be a big deal. But we are in the middle of an experience that has touched every single person on the planet. And this is what I find the most comforting thought, is that nobody has done it before. Nobody. So none of the people that you look up to or look down at, none of the people that you admire or who you don't admire, nobody has done it before. Isn't that kind of amazing to realize that when you look around, all you are seeing is amateurs? Doesn't that kind of take the pressure off a little bit? I want to be good at everything. I always do. And I could say to myself, why would I be good at this? Why would I be good at this? I have never done it. I've never done it. Oh, sorry, Justin's getting a text. Okay. Justin's never done this either. Okay. He's never done it. We've never done it. I find that so comforting. In the hero's journey, unexpected allies are always the people who end up getting you through. And they're always the people that you don't expect. When my husband died, I wanted 0 widowed friends, none. And people kept trying to like push me towards they were like, oh my gosh, you got to meet my grandma. Her husband died. And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I don't even want that title. I don't want that label. I don't want to jump into that world at all. I was forced into an introduction with a woman who is now my best friend, Mo Richardson. And I thought, how are we going to be friends? The only thing that we have in common is that our husbands are dead. And guess what? That was kind of enough. That was kind of enough, because what we had in common was actually everything. What we had in common was this experience that transcended where we lived and how we grew up and what we did for a living. And she has become everything to me, absolutely everything. And in the absence of being able to go out and meet new friends, leaning into the communities that you do have here at Peckham, wherever else that you find your people, where you can find points of support, is more important than ever. So much of our survival individually depends on each other. We depend on each other, and it is very easy to offer our compassion and our empathy externally. And I think when I talk about it, that's how I mostly talk about it, right? How can I extend this to other people? How can I make sure that I'm compassionate and empathetic and understanding of other people's experiences? And I know that is a part of the culture here at Peckham, is compassion and empathy. And while you are pouring that into your team members, into your staff members, into your clients, into your colleagues, I want you to also pause and make sure that you are saving some for yourself. And so there are certain phrases that will never, ever precede an empathetic sentence. And one is at least. One is just. So saying, well, at least I've got a job, that's not truly empathetic to yourself. Saying, let's just power through that. That's not empathetic. Saying, I gotta get over this. I gotta get over it. That's not empathetic. And neither is this. This is actually number 1 on my forbidden words list. Okay. It's should. It's should. Nothing ever follows should that is empathetic or compassionate at all. Should is a word that compares. It compares. And I know that we love comparison. We thrive on comparison and compartmentalization and categorization. We want to say, this thing is good, this thing is bad, this thing is worse. Okay, I used that universal measuring stick that I mentioned before. And this is absolutely the saddest, the worst. You get the medal. Here's your trophy. Here's your trophy. No one wants it. Would you even want to win that contest? No, but we play it anyways. Should compares yourself against other people, but your information from other people is so limited. It's so limited. When we did that exercise on your grief recipe 10 minutes ago, would any of the factors that we talked about be evident to people who don't know you personally? Would they know how you were raised to deal with difficult things? No. Would they know your values, your belief system? Probably not. So when we say I should handle it like Joe, look how good Joe's doing. She's doing so great. We don't actually know how Joe's doing. We're assuming, and we're comparing our internal experience to the external projection that Joe is giving us. Should never will move you forward, because to move forward, you have to acknowledge where you are, and you have to be able to acknowledge where you've been. A cornerstone of my work and the podcast is honesty. You will not get to empathy without honesty. You will not move forward without honesty. You just cannot. And I tried every way around it, every way. And I'm not a person who advocates for you just releasing all of those good boundaries that we have, all of those social contracts that we have. But I do find it sad, and I do find it depleting that we take a question, a very big, meaningful question. How are you? How are you? How are you? And we whittle it down to small talk, and we toss it out in the hallway, and before the person can even answer, we're already past them. And even if we're having the worst day of our lives, what do we say? Fine. People asked how I was at Aaron's funeral, and I was like, pretty good. Pretty good. You guys try that? You try those brownies? Yeah, I'd say that. I'm doing pretty good. You know, all things considered. I mean, was I? Not everybody deserves the truth. Not everybody is a safe place for it. You know that. You know that in your interpersonal relationships, you can tell in your heart when someone is not a safe place for your story, and you listen to that. But the people who do want to be there for you, they do need the truth. They need the whole truth. And I could not give it to them because I could not look at the truth myself. Here's some proof of that. These photos were taken in the 3 weeks after my husband, Aaron, died. So this is my Instagram feed 3 weeks after Aaron dies. I'm out at dinner with my mom. I'm taking a selfie with my baby. I'm running. Why? I don't know. I was into it at the time, I guess. I'm trying not to judge past Nora, but like, start knitting or something. What are you doing? Like, I do not run anymore. No, thank you. I'm more of an indoor cat now. Just more of a, we're fine. Like I'll go outside. I'm just not going to go outside for miles. It's too much. These photos they're true. These things happened, but they weren't the full truth. Not even close. The full truth was that I was in the most pain that I had ever been in, that I was absolutely spiraling, that I was breaking down. I stopped going to my job. I no longer had a job. I spent my nights crying, drinking, watching Real Housewives. I wasn't just waiting for people to ask if I was fine. I was projecting my fineness out in front of me as a force field. And it worked. It made sure that nothing could come between, or nothing could penetrate that. The people who wanted to be there for me couldn't get there for me because I was so fine. I was so fine. I didn't want to be anything other than fine because I was sure that if I showed people that, it would be all that they could see. That's a real fear, that you might just become your trauma, that you might just become your diagnosis, that you might just become the worst thing that has ever happened to you, that you will feel your whole humanity shrunk down to a title or down to a label. That's a real fear. When I talk about breaking that down, when I talk about unexpected allies, I got mine in a very, very, very unexpected way. Before Aaron died, he and I wrote his obituary together, which is strange. Most people wait until a person has died, but my dad had died 6 weeks earlier, and my siblings and I had the responsibility of writing my dad's obituary. And our dad was an infomercial writer, so for his job, he wrote a quick and easy copy. Okay, he like got the point across, no muss, no fuss, but also in a clever way that got you to buy a blender. It definitely worked on me. My siblings and I were sitting there, and I mean, we got the pertinent information across, like go to St. Helena's, the ham sandwiches to follow, but we were so stuck on the story part. We wanted so badly to get it right, and it was hard. What did our dad's life mean to him, not just to us as his children? So when Aaron entered hospice, I asked if he would write his obituary with me and if he would make a funeral playlist, and he was like, I already made a playlist. I made the playlist. Just press play. Don't mess with it. Don't add songs. Don't shuffle. I was so grateful. And we sat down together and we wrote his obituary. And this, you can Google it if you want to read the whole thing, Aaron Permort. But this is his cause of death. Really, it's been a problem. It's been a problem. These radioactive spiders just biting people and changing their DNA, okay? And I am urging the CDC to take action, okay, on this very real threat. That spider bite turned Aaron into Spider-Man. And he protected our fair city from villains and from a nefarious criminal named Cancer. Aaron and I included his first wife in the obituary as well, which my friend's grandmother told me was very classy of me. Very classy. We'd actually gone back and forth. We were like, should it be Taylor Swift? Should it be Gwen Stefani? Taylor was pretty young at the time. Gwen Stefani felt like the more age-appropriate choice. Gwen did not make it to the funeral, but we all grieve in different ways. Okay, so there's no judgment there. I mean, I'm sure it was hard for her. Like ex-wife, do you show up? So this is 2014. And the world in 2014 was very different, right? I mean, the internet was different. Life was simpler back in 2014, wasn't it? We didn't have, did we have Snapchat? I don't think we did. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't think we had Snapchat. We for sure didn't have TikTok. When things went viral, maybe one thing went viral a day, Aaron's obituary went viral. It went viral not just because of the facts, which I did get the facts in there, but also because of the truth, which is that Aaron was more than his diagnosis. He was more than his death. And everywhere I went, on the internet, on the TV, on the radio, in languages I didn't even speak, there was Aaron's face and there was Aaron's story. It was right there. I started to get messages from people. I started to get emails and messages from all over the world. And these were people who were extending their compassion to me, and they were also sharing their own stories. They were telling me about things that they were going through. They were telling me about things that they had gone through, sometimes years, sometimes even decades before. And so when I wasn't watching Real Housewives and drinking Skinny Girl Margarita, I was emailing complete strangers. And I started to have this realization that I'm not special. I'm not special, and I mean that in a really good way. That the pain that I thought set me apart from the rest of the world was really something that made me a part of the world. And that there were all of these people who had shared different experiences and the same experiences, who were reaching out to me, a complete stranger, because they too had been shoved into the unknown. They too had no desire to be here, but they knew that I would need them. They knew, like I started to pick up on, that I would need people who got it, because the people who love you can't always get it. I'm going to butcher this quote, but the writer Laura McCowan, she wrote a brilliant book. And now I'm spacing on the name of the book. I'm so sorry, Laura, wherever you are. But she wrote a beautiful book. She only has one. You can Google it and you'll find it. And she wrote that one stranger who understands your experience entirely will do for you what all your friends and family cannot. They are the cool glass of water in hell. And these people were my cool glass of water. And all of a sudden, hell felt a whole less hot. So how do we move forward? How do we bring all of this with us into our future selves? So slowly. And I know that we are not a particularly patient people. I know that nobody wants to hear, oh, it's going to take time, but I'm also talking to you from a comfortable distance of time. It's been almost 7 years since I experienced those losses, and they still hurt, and they hurt in a very different way. It is not the same. I'm no longer trapped behind a pane of glass. I'm no longer being electrocuted by hot needles, but I am always going to carry that love and those experiences forward with me. There are many mental health professionals who have studied post-traumatic growth. And there's evidence out there that people, many people, not all people, but many people who experience loss and trauma and illness come out of it with a renewed sense of purpose or passion, with like a new lease on life, and that takes time. It takes time. And it is not about snapping back to who you were, and certainly not quickly. The final parts of the hero's journey, the final parts of moving forward, I love this illustration so much because it ends openly. You do return to some sort of homeostasis, but you are not the same even if you look the same. Frodo goes back to the Shire. Huge spoilers for The Hobbit right now, okay? Huge. He goes back. He does make it. He makes it back to the Shire. He has vanquished the enemy. He has found his allies in a bunch of stinky dwarves that he didn't want to go on a journey with. He comes back, he walks into the exact same house, and all of his neighbors say, he's back, looks just the same. Only he knows that he's different, and maybe only you know that you're different too. Maybe you're the only person who knows that. When we talk about emotional honesty, I think the hardest thing is that we are all captains of our ship. It is on us to explain to the people who love us, who care about us, who work with us, who want to be there with and for us, who we are now and how we are now. The journey also ends openly because you're going to go through something again. Eventually, you will be pushed back into the unknown. You have not filled up your punch card of tragedies and losses, even if you've survived 2020. It's such a bad BOGO. It really is the worst deal, okay? It's a Subway Sub Club card, for those of us who are old enough to remember those, that you just never fill, and you never really get that free 6-inch either. Such a bummer. It's not like, 3 dead people, 4th one is free. No, nothing. It's such a, we really have to review the terms and conditions. And I think, I've got complaints. I'd like to speak to you, the manager of this world, if I can, all right? Oh, God. So the final parts are that you return and that you change and you come out differently, even if you look normal again. And right now, again, not knowing where we are in this pandemic, but we're starting to see a lot of us talk about what's normal, right? And how can we get back to normal? And what does it mean to go back to normal? I don't know. I don't know what it will mean for the families of those 3 million people who have died. I don't know what it will mean for all of the kids who never really got to graduate, or the babies who still haven't met their grandparents, or, the kindergartners who left their room and still haven't returned. We don't know yet. We don't know. And so we will still need patience. We'll still need grace. I think all the time about this interaction I had after my husband died. I was at Target, right in those first few weeks. I was wearing makeup. I was looking very, very normal. And I ran into a person that I hadn't seen in 10 years. I hadn't seen her since after high school. And we talked and we went on our own ways. And I thought, oh, she thinks I'm normal. Like, she doesn't know. And all I can think of is now is, well, why do you think she was normal? Like, but you also didn't ask, hey, your husband died lately? Like we didn't ask, we don't know. We don't know what normal is anymore. And I think we all have this powerful responsibility to help redefine it for each other and for the people that we care about. We've got this opportunity now to say, this is where we've been these past 14 months, and this is what I want to carry forward from this moment. How about you? How about you? This is one of my favorite quotes. I'm ending on a quote so that you know I'm deep, okay? You know I read, or you know I'm a reader. This is the second stanza of a 3-stanza poem. It is so beautiful, and I think it is the perfect definition of what it means to move forward and not move on. I think it is the perfect definition of moving forward and of resilience. And I love it so much because it does not include the sort of, it does not include the binary. It is the and. The and is doing so much hard work in this poem. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. The point is not just life is beautiful, so good vibes only. Stop focusing on the bad. It is not just life is terrible. Stop smiling. What do you have to be happy about? It is both. And moving forward, we have only one responsibility, which is to just keep going and know that we are normal and that no feeling is final. So thank you so much for having me here with you today. Peckham is such a beautiful, special place, truly, and I feel really, really honored to be a part of your work today. Thank you.
Nora, thank you. I was thinking on the very wise quote that you pulled, because you are so well read, that you talked a lot about and I don't think we got to mention that one of our core committable values at Peckham is embrace the and. Feel free to put that in your PowerPoint.
Oh, love it. Yes.
We would love it if you repeated that. We do have a few questions, so we are going to start with those now, and I hope everyone can hear me. And the first question is, do you think that grief overall has gotten worse since the COVID pandemic?
I think that we are seeing it for maybe the first time. Like we have been confronted with more grief than we have for a long time, especially, certain more privileged populations definitely have had the privilege of grieving. And we've also, because of technology, because of the Industrial Revolution, because of all the work that our ancestors did to make our lives easier, we've been less comfortable with the difficult. So that means that when somebody dies, we no longer have customs of like wearing all black. We no longer have those ways that we signal to each other that I'm in pain or that I lost something. Instead, we have a very, swift funeral and a burial, and we go back to work. So I don't know that it's gotten worse. I think that we are now kind of seeing the expansive grief that has always been there, and we are witnessing it more than we have had to in the past.
You touched on this, but I think it's a really important question, so you're going to touch on it again. The question is, I'm curious about your viewpoint on comparing your grief to the grief of others. I have felt that I can't or shouldn't grieve because my situation overall is better than someone else's.
It's very hard. I think comparison, Teddy Roosevelt said comparison is the thief of joy. It's the thief of literally everything, okay? It will absorb everything in its wake. There is no comparing. And I do know that we love to have kind of like a suffering Olympics. We just do, right? So if you're like, well, my husband died, someone will be like, well, like my husband died and then I got hit by a car. And you're like, cool, great. Not everybody does that, okay? But it is a natural reaction to us feeling as if there's a finite resource of empathy. And I can understand why people feel that way. I can absolutely understand why people feel that way because it feels like there is. It feels like there is, but your sorrow is not in competition with somebody else's. And that is a really, really hard habit to break. And the people who make you feel like it is are probably not a safe place to share those feelings with. They just aren't. And if you can, there's so many great online grief groups where you can find people who have gone through your specific loss, and people who won't brightside you, people who won't but you, people who won't just, people who won't at least you. And that's really, really important. But no, there is no comparison. And I know that when I have done the comparison game, it is because I am feeling unseen, unheard, unknown. And when somebody does it to you, it is because they are lacking those same things. It never has anything to do with you or with your own loss. It is just their own personal feeling of they're just not being enough for them.
Thank you. The next is a how-to question. How do you recommend that we talk with others who are experiencing recent loss? I never know what is right to say, and I fear not saying anything.
Oh yeah, I think the worst thing that you can say is nothing. I can forgive all the dopey things people said, you know, like at the funeral, like you'll meet someone else. I was like, what? Like, like here? What? Like, is it you? What are you talking about? I can forgive all of those things. What's harder to understand or what's harder to forgive is the silence, even though I know we all fear saying or doing the wrong thing, and that leads us to saying or doing nothing. It is perfectly fine to say to somebody, I am so sorry this happened and I don't know what to say, but I care about you. I care about you. I heard what happened. I care about you.
So this is a nice follow-up, taking that one step further. What is the best way or some ways to support someone who is going through grief?
Okay, so I need to caveat everything, which is when someone is suffering, and I think you can all look inside your hearts and know this is true. When you are a grieving person, you're not at your best, okay? Some of us are like the worst. I got mad at my mom, livid, wanted to, I don't just really just so mad at her. She lit the wrong candle in my home. What? Like, what? It was an expensive candle, okay? I was like, we're not burning that. I can't afford another one. It's just for looking at, just bananas. I screamed at my mom for lighting the wrong candle. Sometimes grieving people are the absolute worst, okay? She was just trying to like make my house smell nice. You're going to do the wrong thing, and then you're going to get over it and you're not going to take it personally. I always tell people you do what you can do and what you will do. You do it humbly. By that, I mean, you don't need a thank you. If somebody, you know, is like, I hate pie, you're not like, I'm never making her pie again. You're like, okay, great. I'll go throw it in the dumpster. You let it all roll off of you. Okay. As if you are there to be grief adjacent, if you are there to be a witness, it is not about you. And you repeat that to yourself over and over, and you do whatever you can consistently and competently. My friend Hannah, we were not friends at the time, but our husbands knew each other, and her husband was still alive, which did not love that. I mean, I was happy he was alive, but also I was like, I don't want to be around anyone whose husband is alive or whose husband is dead. No one who's ever had anyone or has anyone at all. Impossible. And she sent me a text message and said, I'm at Costco. I'm going to get butter, milk, eggs, drop it on your back porch. You don't have to talk to me. I was like, oh, great. Fine, do that. And she did it for weeks and weeks, because that's the thing she could do. She was also a mom. She had a lot going on. What she could do was bring me the basics. And finally, one day I opened the door and our friendship began. And there were so many examples like that of people just doing the thing that they could do when they could do it. And the thing that they could offer regardless of like cost. And I don't mean like price. I mean, you know, the opportunity cost of your time too. So you just do something, and if it's the wrong thing, you say, okay, sorry. And then you sort of just move on.
Okay, the next question is, what do you mean when you say no feeling is final?
No feeling is final. No feeling is final. I always know that it is not always going to be this bad, and it's not always going to be this good. So our feelings are not final. There's the work of Susan David. She's a psychologist. She wrote this book, Emotional Agility, and she says that feelings are data, not directive. So your feelings are telling you something is important to you, right? If you're feeling grief, it's telling you you love that person, you value that person. If you're feeling anger, you trace that back, and it's violating some value in your life. It's telling you something. The feeling I had the day that Aaron died is different from the feeling I have now when I talk about him. when I think about him, when I look into the eyes of our child, the way that I experience happiness today is going to be different than the way that I experience happiness tomorrow. Our feelings are fleeting.
You've mentioned books now a couple times, and there is a question about books. Are there other books that you would recommend? And also, are there specific groups, grief groups, in person or online, that you would recommend?
If you've lost a partner, the Modern Widows Club has chapters everywhere. The Dinner Party does in person, and now online. They do dinner groups based around loss in your city, which I think is so interesting and I think really productive too, to have like a group of people that you can see in person and online. And then online groups are just kind of like everywhere. And honestly, by the way, it is perfectly fine. Just like any other sort of mental health service, and these aren't necessarily technically like mental health services provided by a professional, but anything that you do for yourself to take care of your mental health, you're going to have to shop around. It's like dating. I know dating's the worst, but you know, like you have to shop around for a therapist. You got to meet somebody that like really like gets what you're going through. We have a good community of people who support the Terrible Thanks for Asking podcast, who have like a Facebook group, and it's not loss specific, but it's just a really, really beautiful group of people supporting each other. As far as books, I will send you a list that you can send to everybody after this, but I really love the Harold Kushner books. He is a rabbi. He wrote the incredible When Bad Things Happen to Good People, right? Like the classic. It's a classic for a reason. It stands the test of time. C.S. Lewis wrote, who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Narnia, also wrote A Grief Observed in the year after he lost his wife. It's really, really like a beautiful, beautiful book. My friend Kate Bowler wrote Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved, which is the story of her being diagnosed with incurable stage 4 cancer when she was 35 years old, a young mom, and learning how to live with it. And she's also a professor of divinity at Duke and had studied preachers and the prosperity gospel, and was like, wait, what? This can't happen to me. Like, I'm a good person. Like, no. And those are, but I will send a full list of really, really helpful books for not just, you know, death loss, but like all kinds of hard times.
That's awesome. Thank you. Last question. It has nothing to do with loss. It has to do with your current husband. And the question is, how did you meet him?
Oh, geez. Okay. This is in my second book, No Happy Endings, but I'll just tell you right now. So I met him through my friend Mo, who is that widow that I met, who I was like, I don't want to be friends. And people were like, but your husbands are dead. And I was like, great, cool. Anything else? They're like, yeah, your husbands are dead. And I was like, okay, no. But I had coffee with her, and then we just were. And Matthew, my current husband, was friends with Mo from the time they were 20. They like used to look like brother and sister and wear each other's jeans because they were like dirty little punks. I had no interest in meeting anybody at all. My plan was that I was going to be alone forever, and maybe someone could love me, but I just wouldn't love them back. Would be a great deal for them, right? I was like, you can fall in love with me. I just won't fall in love with you. And then you can live in your own house and have your own life. And maybe we'll meet for dinner twice a week. I don't know. I was just not there. And Mo and I were having a bonfire because I love burning things. And you know what I love burning most? Hospital bills. So we were burning our medical bills from our husbands. And this guy walked into her backyard, and I was like, what? She invited someone. Now I have to pretend to care about him. And he sat down around the fire. Do you guys have Menards here? Okay. You save big money. You save big money. You know what else happens? You buy a plastic Adirondack chair from Menards. You put it by a fire. A man sits in it. It flips over. It melts. Okay. It collapses. I see feet flying through the air, just illuminated by firelight. I see an arc of red wine. I see him go feet overhead, barrel roll, pop back up. And I had not laughed in a year. Like, I had not laughed. And I laughed so hard at him, so hard. I thought I was going to die. I was pointing and laughing. I was like, I could not breathe. I was like, I'm going to throw up or die. This is the funniest thing. I hadn't even heard his name. And knowing him now, he is so shy. I can't believe he didn't just like into dust and leave. But he just came back and was like, hey, I'm Matthew. And then he sat quietly and just listened to Mo and I talk and cry for like 2 hours. And then finally I was like, what's your deal? Like, is your wife dead? And he was like, oh no, I'm divorced. And I was like, what? That's amazing. That's bananas. I cannot believe you survived that. Like, oh my God. It was just, it was so different from my own experience. And I think I was the first person who ever asked him, definitely the first stranger who had asked him like a lot of like emotional details about it. But I was like, oh my God, what happened? Like, oh, then what? Then what? Then what? And he was like so open about it. He was so open about it. And he just had this sense of like he had survived something really big too. And I loved the way he talked about his kids. And I wasn't like, oh, I'll date this guy. But like, then I went home and I found him on Facebook and I sent him a message. I don't know why. I don't know why. And I said, you should ask me out. And he messaged and said, maybe, yeah, I should. I was like, do it, you doofus. Like, he's so shy. He didn't know how to do it. And then we went out a week later and then we were together and that was kind of it. So it was like as easy as when I met Aaron, when I also was like, never going to meet a guy ever. And then I met him and was like, oh, dang it. Well, guess we got to get married. So, and it's been wonderful. And he's really, I was telling Sarah earlier, she's like, well, how do you have both? And I think our hearts, our lives, our loves, they're always bigger than we think they are. Like we think you can't have both. And he just has so much respect for Aaron and the relationship that we had because I had a good thing and that's how I could recognize a good thing again. You know, like I already had love once. And so I know how to be loved and I know how to love. And that's not something that everybody gets. I feel very, very lucky. And he feels really lucky too. I hope. Just kidding. Because he is.
Yes, you got lucky twice. And I'll also chime in with the Laura McCowan book, which is We Are the Luckiest.
That's it. We are the luckiest. I could see the cover, like the watercolor. We are the luckiest. Yeah. And that's a sobriety book, but it's such a beautiful, you can take that book and apply it to anything that's in your life.
It is a beautiful, beautiful book with lots of life lessons.
Yeah.
And you have given us so many wonderful lessons and words of wisdom and wonderful, funny, true stories. Don't leave the stage just yet. Joe is going to send you off. Thank you so much, Nora.
Like literally throw me off.
Maybe. That would be entertaining.
So we have for you today.
Did you make this?
No.
Okay. Never mind. Sorry.
No. But we know the people who do make it.
Yeah.
We
I
have a
love this.
Patagonia bag full of some Peckham swag.
Oh, thank you. Oh, man, I
So-
love these. I'm going to go on a hike and actually be prepared. Oh, thank you. You're so
are
lovely.
welcome.
Thank you for matching me today.
Oh, I know. If you guys can
You
see,
get the text.
we didn't quite plan it, but
We did plan
it. Just
it.
turned out that way.
It was planned, first of all. It was planned. Thank you so much for having me. I don't want to leave because it's so nice. So I'll just stay. I'll just stay.
You are welcome.
Give
to
me a desk.
stay.
Give me a desk.
It's been wonderful today to have Nora with us and to learn from her. You know, I told her earlier I hadn't heard that phrase post-traumatic growth. And I kept thinking, if there's anything that we've learned in a global pandemic or things that we've learned through our own grief and our own loss, is that we do grow. We do grow, we do move forward. And I'm hoping that you heard some of these words of wisdom today and that we as a community are going to move forward together through our own grief, through our loss, and help make the world a different place. So thank you all for joining us today.